My name is Edna Wallace, and the last time my father spoke about me in public, he laughed. She's just my secretary, he said loud enough for every decorated man in that room to hear. They laughed with him, and I stood there smiling like it didn't hurt, when in truth it tore straight through me. Because he wasn't joking, he meant it. To him, I was never a soldier, just a shadow in his story. What he didn't know was that the secretary he mocked had once commanded the kind of men he called heroes. And that night, I made a promise to myself he'd learn who I really was, not through my words, but through the silence he taught me to master. The sea air stung against my skin as the band struck up its brass anthem. The pier was packed so tightly, it looked like the waves themselves had been pushed back to make room for the crowd. Flags fluttered, cameras clicked, medals glinted in the California sun. It was a celebration of service, a shrine built for the past. My father stood at the center of it all, grinning as if he'd never left command. His name echoed through loudspeakers, Captain Henry Wallace honored for 4 decades of devotion to the Navy. He looked every bit the hero he'd always wanted to be, chest out, hands clasped behind his back, chin high, as if still on deck giving orders. I watched him from a few steps behind, close enough to feel the pride radiating off him, but far enough that no one would notice. I didn't quite belong there. When the speeches ended, reporters swarmed him like gulls chasing bread. He basked in it. I'd seen that expression all my life, the thrill of being seen, of being saluted. Then one of them pointed toward me and asked the question that should have been harmless. "What does your daughter do?" "Captain." The sound of his laugh cracked through the noise, sharp, confident, practiced. He slapped the back of a man beside him, a retired admiral who laughed along. "She keeps me organized," he said, amused by his own wit. "My secretary. Poor thing, she can't stay away from the Navy life." The men howled, and that laughter rolled across the pier like gunfire. For them, it was nothing, a joke between soldiers. For me, it was a blade drawn slow. I smiled, because that's what I'd been trained to do: absorb, conceal, endure. The trick wasn't not to feel it, it was to make sure no one ever saw that you did. My fingers found my wrist under the cuff of my sleeve, brushing the faint outline of a tattoo few people in the world could recognize. The mark was small, precise, and hidden, because so was everything I'd done. Just 2 weeks earlier, I'd given orders that saved 48 soldiers trapped in a dead zone overseas. No one here would ever know. Another round of laughter broke out when my father lifted his glass and declared, "Here's to the real warriors, not the ones behind desks." The crowd roared again, and even the band seemed to pause for him. I held the smile, polite, steady, almost rehearsed. Inside, something quiet gave way. Maybe it was respect, maybe it was patience. Whatever it was, it slipped out with the tide that afternoon. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn a place beside him. That day, I understood I'd been standing there all along, he just never bothered to look. I once believed honor was something my father had taught me. That day at the harbor, I realized he'd never understood it at all. I landed in Annapolis before dawn, the kind of morning that feels like someone pressed pause on the rest of the world. By 4:30, I was beneath the Navy building in a windowless room where monitors stacked like graves threw a cold blue light across faces and keyboards. The smell was always the same down here, ozone and coffee, and the faint metallic tang of equipment that had never known sunlight. Aboard those screens, we didn't cheer. We logged. We encoded. The voice in my earpiece came through, clipped, and even the kind of voice that kept a room from panicking when the world wanted to. Silent current mission success. 48 saved. Debrief tomorrow. I replied the way I always did, concise, and without ornament copy. SRU 77 closing channel. No applause, no medals. Just the quiet folding shut of one operation, and the immediate readiness for the next. I rubbed my wrist, feeling the raised scar where a tattoo hid beneath skin and cuff. It was a private thing, a shorthand among a few who had shared impossible nights. Down here, that ink was a name and a responsibility. Up there on the pier, it was nothing. That difference had followed me onto every flight, into every quiet room. Red flared across one of the displays. A new alert. I pulled the feed forward, fingers moving with the ease of habit. Origin California Veterans Network. I scrolled through logs until one line stopped me cold. H. Wallace. Registered member San Diego chapter. The system doesn't make mistakes like this. If the feed was accurate, then the person everyone had been celebrating was now a blip on an intelligence report. General Pierce's tone didn't change when he issued the order. Confirm the leak source. No exceptions. There was no warmth in it, only the iron clarity of command. I felt the weight of the badge on my lapel. I felt the tug of something older, less professional, and more personal pulling at my throat. A voice I'd grown up hearing echoed in my head. Loyalty above all words that had been taught as a creed, not a question. I leaned back, thumbed the edge of my folder, and let the old phrase settle into a new light. If loyalty was truly above all, then I had a duty that reached farther than family dinners and praise from the press. I set my jaw and slid the SRU badge onto the lapel. Let's see if you meant that I thought and stood up to do the thing no one wanted done to someone they loved. 3 days later, I was at my father's house for the veterans' barbecue, the backyard full of people trading weathered stories and louder drinks. Smells of smoke and sauce hung thick, and the laughter moved in waves, easy practiced, unconcerned. I wore a social smile like armor, and kept my voice low because the room was full of ears that belonged to other people's pasts. Commander Elias Brooks found me near the grill, his hands steeped in the same familiarity he'd shown my father for decades. He extended his hand, that old soldier's grip, and when my sleeve slipped as I reached for my cup, the edge of the hidden mark flashed for a second, 77, precise as a stamp. His expression shifted before he spoke, instant and involuntary. That mark! You're not supposed to have that. I let the words hang the way you let a door close softly so someone can't sneak back in. Supposed to, or allowed to, I answered, voice small and flat. He didn't press it, but he didn't walk away either. People like him carry memories like scars, and recognition is a reflex. Only someone who'd been through certain classified nights would know the weight of that symbol. I turned my attention back to the crowd, forcing casual conversation, while a small humming device in my pocket blinked. Mission compromised. Internal suspect veteran network breach confirmed. My fingers tightened around my cup as I opened the secure feed. The first name flagged was the one standing beside my father, Commander Elias Brooks. The room around us blurred into smoke and laughter. But in my headset, everything was sharp timestamps, IP traces, breadcrumbed packets leading directly into the veteran network. The same hands that clapped and slapped my father on the back were the same hands that could be moving secrets into dark corners. I swallowed and stepped back, watching my father laugh at some retold battle tale, unaware that trust and possibly treason sat at his elbow. The backyard felt suddenly small, the sky lower. People joked about old times, and I stood in the middle of it all, with the knowledge of how those old times could be bought and sold. Family or mission, I thought, and the words were as a coin flipped into the dark. One will destroy the other. General Pierce's summons came before sunrise. His office smelled of paper and gun oil, and his voice carried the weight of verdicts. The leaks confirmed, Colonel. Source traces back to the Veterans Network. You'll handle the audit. I opened the file he pushed across the desk. The ink still fresh. The header stamped in red, primary suspect group. Henry Wallace Commander, Elias Brooks, and Associated Veterans. My throat closed before the words left it. Sir, that's my father. He didn't even blink. Then do your job. That night I drove to my parents' house, the one I'd grown up in, but never really belonged to. The trophies glimmered under soft lamps. The medals lined up like ghosts along the mantel. My father's voice filled the room, telling my mother every detail of the ceremony, his laughter thick with pride. None of the photos on the wall showed me. They never had. When he stepped outside to take a call, I opened his laptop on instinct. The password took seconds to crack. The habits of counterintelligence never sleep. A single encrypted folder appeared labeled Personal Archives. I broke the cipher, expecting nothing but old speeches or photographs. Instead, I found the first line, Shipment Code Blue Harbor. Clearance via Veterans Committee. My pulse stuttered. That code name belonged to Silent Current, the very mission I'd just dismantled weeks earlier. I checked the sender's address. The email hadn't originated from his account, but from another device piggybacking on the same network. Tracing the IP felt like watching a slow car crash in real time. Commander Elias Brooks. He was using my father's home Wi-Fi as a disguise. My father wasn't the leak, he was the perfect cover. I wanted to warn him, to tell him his name had become a weapon in someone else's hands, but Pierce's words echoed in my head. No disclosure, even if the suspect is blood. I stepped onto the balcony. Across the street, Elias stood under a flickering streetlight, cigarette burning bright between his fingers. He lifted his glass toward me, a mock salute, a quiet dare. That smile wasn't friendly. It was a promise that he knew exactly what I'd found. A week later, my father's backyard filled again with old uniforms and louder laughter. The annual Veterans Barbecue, the same ritual of smoked bourbon and war stories. I arrived as the dutiful daughter, civilian clothes. Polite grin, no trace of the officer beneath. My recording device hummed quietly inside my jacket pocket, live and listening. My father clapped an arm around Elias's shoulders, pride swelling as he showed off a framed photo with the Secretary of the Navy. I nodded along every word, every cheer feeling like static in my ears. Elias poured me a drink, eyes narrowing in amusement. You really take after him. Always watching. And you never stop talking, I replied, meeting his stare. His hand tightened around the glass, a tell he couldn't suppress. Guilt has its own pulse. Then my phone vibrated, a coded alert flashing on the small screen, encrypted packet sent. Proximity within 1 meter of target H. Wallace. I scanned the crowd. My father stood beneath the porch light, laughing, the silver watch on his wrist catching the glow. The gift Elias had given him last year. My breath hitched. That was the transmission point. The watch wasn't just a gift. It was a transmitter. A microchip hidden beneath the casing. The symbol of his service had become the tool of his betrayal, and he didn't even know it. I steadied my voice as I approached him. That watch looks vintage. Gift from Elias, he said, proud. Navy made, keeps perfect time. I forced a small smile. I'm sure it does. Later that night, I filed my report to Pierce, every detail time-stamped and sealed. I thought it was over until the following morning when headlines exploded online, Captain Wallace's daughter spying on veterans' data. My photo from the ceremony splashed across every feed. The headline screamed, the Navy's secretary turned spy. Elias had moved first. My father called before noon, voice clipped cold. What the hell did you do? Edna, the press says you're under investigation. That's not true. I told you your work would embarrass this family someday. The line went dead. I stood in the dark apartment, my SRU uniform hanging silent behind me, the badge I'd earned through blood and silence staring back from its hook. My hands shook, not from fear, but from fury. He used to say loyalty was sacred. But standing there, I realized loyalty had become the very thing that silenced me. The headlines exploded overnight. Every station from California to D.C. carried the same story, Colonel's daughter implicated in veterans leak from secretary to spy. My face flooded every feed. By morning, my father appeared on TV, his tone cold, almost relieved. My daughter's a civilian worker. She's not in operations. Don't drag my name into this nonsense. Watching him felt like drowning. He didn't defend me, he erased me. The next day, I was suspended from SRU 77. My badge confiscated, access revoked. General Pierce only said they need a scapegoat. Stay low. So I did, alone in a quiet Arlington apartment, staring at the tattoo on my wrist that reminded me who I really was. 2 weeks later, an envelope slid under my door, a photo of me planting a recorder at the barbecue scrawled beneath it. NISWork spy. Elias. He'd been watching me the whole time. I flew back to San Diego to confront him and my father. They were together when I arrived. My father's voice was cold, but Elias smiled. Still trying to play soldier, I met his eyes. Funny, I outranked you once, you just didn't know it. He froze. He'd served under my command years ago. I pulled up the encrypted record. Unit 77. Operation Tide Glass. You reported to me, Commander. My father stared, pale and silent. I rolled up my sleeve. The ink caught the light. That's not for show. That's command clearance. When I told him to check the back of his watch, he found the tiny chip blinking red. his pride shattered. "You used me," he whispered. Elias left before dawn. Hours later, Pierce messaged Operation Night Rain authorized. The next day, before a live crowd, SRU officers surrounded the stage. I stepped out in full uniform. My father rose slowly as a SEAL murmured, "Sir, with respect." "She outranks us all." The world fell silent as I read the charge. "Commander Elias Brooks, you are under arrest for espionage and treason." My father's eyes locked on my tattoo, no longer hidden, no longer denied. I never imagined reclaiming my honor would happen in the same place it had once been destroyed. The San Diego harbor, the pier where my father called me his secretary, was now a battlefield. The sea wind cut cold across the stage lights, and above the dull hum of counterintelligence helicopters circled under the clouds. The operation was set for 1900 hours. Codename Night Rain. I led SRU 77 onto the field disguised as the stage crew for the National Veterans Commendation Ceremony. Elias Brooks stood at the podium, calm and smug, as if guilt could be hidden behind patriotism. My father sat in the front row, invited as a guest of honor, wearing the same silver watch, now just evidence locked in a sealed case. He had no idea I would appear. When the anthem ended, I gave a silent signal. Around the pier, dark silhouettes moved into position. General Pierce's voice broke through my earpiece. "Colonel Wallace, authority confirmed. Proceed at your discretion." I stepped out of the shadows, my dress uniform catching the spotlight. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elias began to say, "We served with honor," but I cut him off, voice steady and cold. "Commander Elias Brooks, by authority of Naval Counterintelligence, you are under arrest for espionage and treason." The pier fell silent. Agents closed in as Elias's composure cracked. His eyes darted toward my father, frozen in disbelief. I opened the classified file and read aloud. Operation Silent Current 48, lives saved under SRU 77 command oversight. Colonel Edna Wallace. For a moment, even the wind stopped. Then Pierce stepped forward. "Today, we recognize an officer who led with integrity and silence. Colonel Wallace, your command protected this nation from betrayal within." My father rose slowly, trembling. A SEAL beside him whispered, "Sir, she outranks us all." He turned toward me, eyes full of pride and regret, and raised his hand in a salute no one asked for, but everyone followed. The applause rose like the tide washing away years of silence. He taught me respect for rank. That night, I finally taught him what rank truly meant. 2 weeks later, the tribunal convened at Fort Meade. The courtroom smelled of cold metal and protocol. Elias Brooks was brought in shackled head, but the arrogance gone from his posture. Cameras weren't allowed. The silence was punishment enough. When it was my turn to speak, I stepped forward and let the words fall sharp and measured. He used my father's reputation to gain classified access. The chip inside Captain Wallace's watch transmitted encrypted data every 48 hours. He didn't know, but I did. Elias's attorney rose immediately. "You had personal involvement, Colonel. Why didn't you recuse yourself?" "Because when family is targeted, I said silence is protection, not conflict." General Pierce took the witness stand, voice firm. Colonel Wallace acted under direct authorization. Her discretion prevented multiple operations from being compromised. The panel withdrew to deliberate. The wait felt longer than any mission I'd ever commanded. Then the presiding officer returned, reading the verdict with surgical precision. "Commander Elias Brooks, guilty on all charges." The room rose to its feet, the scrape of chairs echoing off the walls. Everyone stood except my father. He remained seated, hands knotted together, staring at the floor. When the chamber emptied, he approached, his voice rough and unsteady. "I didn't know what that watch was, I swear." "I know," I said quietly. "You were too busy polishing it." Later, I filed my transfer papers. Pierce called me in, brows drawn. "After everything you've done, why step back?" "Because winning doesn't always mean staying," I said. "It means knowing when peace has been restored." My request was approved. When I left the base for the last time, the glow of monitors faded behind me, the voices calling codenames swallowed by the hum of distance. 10 years of silence, and for once it finally sounded like peace. A year later, I sat in my new office at the Naval Strategic Operations Division, the morning sun stretching across the Chesapeake Bay like molten silver. The glass walls reflected light onto the floor, calm and sharp, the kind of calm that only follows long wars those fought in silence. An unread message blinked on my screen. From Henry Wallace subject to my daughter, not my secretary. I opened it slowly. I used to think medals made a man honorable. But watching you that night, I saw honor in silence. You didn't disgrace our name. You defined it. I read it once. Then I deleted it, not from anger, but because forgiveness doesn't need proof. Leaving my office, I walked down a hallway washed in white light. Outside the window, ships glided into harbor, their decks gleaming. A group of young officers passed saluting as they went. I nodded back, quiet, composed. They'll never know the battles I fought, I thought. But they'll walk safely because of them. My hand brushed against my wrist. The faint outline of Unit 77 remained faded but alive, not a secret anymore, but a symbol carved by endurance. I stopped by the window, watching the sunlight dance on the waves. For the first time, it felt like peace didn't need sound or witness. It just needed truth. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And sometimes it salutes you first.